Linda, you can begin.
Welcome, everyone. Tonight, you will be in for a treat. We're going to start in about 1 minute. We thank you all for joining us for our second segment of our virtual speaker series on mental health. So in about 2 minutes, we'll get started. Thank you for joining us. Good evening, everyone. My name is Linda Wyatt Simpson. I am the chair of our Health and Wellness Committee of the Trenton Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta. And tonight, we welcome you to join us in our virtual speaker series on mental health. Tonight, you are in for a treat. But before we get started, I wanted to give you a few housekeeping rules. This is a webinar, so if you do have any questions or concerns, there is a Q&A section or the chat at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to use that as we will monitor any questions or concerns that you have about tonight's presentation. Tonight's presenter is someone that I believe you will totally enjoy. We are talking about Dr. Danita. She is our speaker for the evening that is going to give us a great deal of knowledge about keeping ourselves mentally healthy. Dr. Danita is a passionate people helper who facilitates bringing emotional and spiritual hope and healing to the hurting. After working closely with faith leaders for many years and serving as executive pastor for the past 10 years, she holds a special place in the heart for the hurting faith. Dr. Danita is a licensed marriage and family therapist, a board-certified professional Christian counselor, and former public school teacher and adjunct professor. She has over 30 years of experience as a seminar facilitator, conference speaker, professional development trainer, mentor, and counselor. Dr. Danita is the owner and clinical director of Mending Hearts Family Counseling, where she and her team passionately provide clinically and culturally sound counseling to individuals, couples, children, and families of all ages and backgrounds. Her team is prepared to offer Christian counseling with thorough biblical integration. Dr. Danita's clinical focus is on marriage preparation, marriage and family challenges, as well as childhood trauma. So as you can see, we have a dynamic speaker this evening, and we know that you are going to enjoy her. So the next voice that you're going to hear, and I'm going to be quiet, is Dr. Danita Thompson. Dr. Danita, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Are you able to hear me? Good, great, great. Thank you, Linda, and thank you for inviting me tonight to be a part of such an amazing group. And I'm looking forward to just sharing my passion on tonight. I really love providing education about mental health and emotional wholeness to anyone who will listen, but especially to people who look like me. For so long, we have shied away from even wanting to be educated about mental health and emotional health, specifically because there's such a stigma around it. And so I'm just excited that the stigma is really being minimized, and so many more people that look like me are interested in pursuing help for their emotional wellness and just becoming more educated. And so tonight, I want to just provide for you some basic health and emotional health education. I want to normalize some of the things that people experience that sometimes we use words like, oh my God, I feel like I'm crazy, or we call other people crazy, but in our field, we don't use the word crazy. We do say that people have mental and emotional challenges and things that they are struggling with, but we want to kind of normalize, because everyone struggles or has the potential to struggle with some emotional challenge at some point in their life. And so I'm going to just share my screen and get started. Let's see, I want this on. Okay. So those are all of my social media and website information there, if anybody wanted to take a screenshot or anything like that. But so tonight, again, we're going to provide for you some mental health education and just share some of the common mental health challenges that people experience. And then I want to end with some tips for maintaining your mental health. And so for the next 40 minutes, I'm going to go through, and of course, this is not an exhaustive session of everything that I could possibly share or help you with. It's not an opportunity that I have to counsel anybody, but I'm just hoping that this education is a start for some people that may recognize that getting help may not be the worst thing in the world for them, or again, normalize for others some of the things that you may have been experiencing. And so we just want to start out with just a little bit of education, sharing the difference between mental health versus mental illness. A lot of people shy away from this whole topic on mental health, but everybody has mental health. We have mental health just like we have physical health. And there are times that our mental health, just like our physical health, can become challenged. We can get sick, we can not feel well. Well, mentally or emotionally, we can be challenged. There can be times where we don't feel well in our emotions. And so just getting to the point of recognizing that our mental health is just as significant as the physical health, and we are one body. And so just as we can be physically challenged, we can be mentally challenged as well. And so when one is experiencing mental illness, those are categorized as your depression, your anxiety. It can get extreme to the extent where you may have like paranoia, schizophrenia. Those are more extreme mental illnesses. But tonight, I'm going to focus on the common mental or emotional struggles that people experience. When people are feeling mentally healthy, those are the people who have positive attitudes, their stress level is low, they're optimistic, they have clear thinking, they don't have cognitive distortions, they think in a healthy way, and they're able to be logical and rational and reasonable. But when you experience mental health challenges due to stress or depression or anxiety or situations that may happen in your life, then that's when we can say that you either have a mental health challenge or you are mentally ill. I want to also share, oftentimes, before I get into the actual common challenges that people experience, I just want to share, oftentimes people say, who do I go to? I don't even know where to start if I need help. And so the mental health professionals that are commonly sought after for assistance with common mental health struggles are your licensed professional counselors. They're called LPCs. They will be considered in our field general practitioners. And then you have licensed marriage and family therapists, which is my designation. I'm an LMFT. We specialize in helping couples, counsel couples and families, but we all have the same training. It just means that I took a few more courses in working with married couples and families than the LPC did. And then you have your licensed clinical social worker. They also can give clinical counseling just like the LPC and the LMFT, but their specialization was more in working with marginalized population. So we all do the same work. So any of these designations, if you reach out to an LPC, an LMFT, an LCSW, we can all counsel anyone who is dealing with depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress, grief, any of those types of challenges. And then you have your next level up, I would say, if we use layman terms, your psychologist and your psychiatrist. A psychologist is one who is able to do more extensive psychological evaluations and assessments, and they're trained to work with the individuals that may be schizophrenic or bipolar or have more severe mental illness. And then your psychiatrists are actually MDs, and they're the ones who are prescribing medication. And so I just wanted to help you understand, because we often get calls of people saying, I don't know if you're the one that I'm supposed to call, and I don't even know how to start this process. So if by the end of this session, you recognize that you might be able to benefit from seeking out professional help, these are the various people that you can reach out to based on your need. So some of the common mental health problems that people tend to experience: stress, depression, anxiety, grief, trauma, unforgiveness. And unforgiveness is really big, but these are the ones that I want to focus on this evening. And so, do you know the signs of stress? Some stress is good. And we shouldn't be fearful of being stressed. Sometimes people, there's good stress. You could be getting a new job or starting a new job or getting married or having a baby. Those are stressful situations, but they don't last forever. if you are experiencing these types of signs, like being agitated or feeling hopeless, or finding that you're beginning to neglect yourself, or you have personality changes where once you were very jovial and got along with people, and now you're short-tempered and you don't really want to be around people, so you have kind of like a personality shift. That could also be a sign of being overwhelmed with stress, or just withdrawing from people, withdrawing from the things that you enjoy doing, the types of activities that you enjoyed. These are all signs of unhealthy stress. And so some of the common symptoms that people tend to experience, and I'm talking about stress now, but when I talk about anxiety and when I talk about depression, some of the symptoms are similar. And so people who are stressed usually have a lot of worry. They have difficulty concentrating. Their eating habits change. They get very moody, and people don't always know that they are necessarily stressed, but the people around you can tell, because sometimes you take on responsibilities and take on loads, and you take it on gradually, and you don't even realize that you are taking on too much. And so after you have overloaded yourself, and sometimes people take on and become overloaded, and overload becomes their norm, but the behavior is not normal. And so people around you begin to recognize, and they're like, are you okay? And so it's just important that you, listen to the people who are in your friend group or in your social community when they communicate to you, or that you pay attention to those who are in your community group, so that you can recognize when someone that you are in relationship with may be overwhelmed with stress. The low self-esteem is also a common symptom where because you're so stressed, the things that you were able to accomplish in the past become more difficult tasks. And so therefore you begin to think, oh, I can't do anything. I can't accomplish this, or I can't seem to finish this. And so your self-esteem becomes affected by that. And then there's body, things happening in your body, muscle tension. You may get irritability in your stomach. All of those can be signs of stress. And so we will move on to anxiety. This is also very common. Many people experience anxiety, but anxiety, again, just like stress, doesn't always have to be connected to something negative. There's a little bit of anxiety is helpful to get you motivated, to get you moving. Feeling afraid is human. It's also a survival instinct when something occurs, when something is really realistically dangerous. If you stumble upon or happen to be in a situation that is dangerous, well, anxiety and fear would be good for you at that moment. And so it's a natural outcome of that type of situation. But when anxiety and fear are experienced when there's no real rationale, and you're just worrying about something that could happen, or something that is down the road, and you don't even really know what the outcome would be, then that type of anxiety needs to be addressed. So we're not talking about the anxiety that you experience because you're stepping into a new situation, or a new situation that's real, like I mentioned earlier, you're stepping into a new job, or you're going to get married. That's anxiety that's warranted. But again, when you have excessive worry and you have difficulty sleeping and you're restless and you have fatigue and you can't concentrate and all of this is due to something that hasn't even happened yet, then that's the type of anxiety that you definitely want to deal with, you want to address. And most often you should probably seek help for anxiety, professional help. And then we're going to move on to depression. And I'm just giving you the definitions and the and what you should look for with these very, very common mental health challenges. People get depressed for many reasons. People get depressed due to loss of jobs, loss of a loved one, loss of life, the way that they thought life would be. The pandemic certainly has heightened anxiety and depression, and many people are still feeling the effects of it. And so it is not uncommon. I want to say that over and over again, just to be able to normalize these experiences that people have. And so when one is experiencing depression, it can range from mild to moderate to severe. Your depression can be based on a situation, a life happening, or it can be biological. It can be something that depression can be a chemical imbalance that you were actually born with. And so there are people, there's a depression called dysthymia, and there are people that kind of live just beneath the bar of living life, and or just beneath the bar of life's satisfaction. And so those people are able to get up and they go to work every single day, and they come back home and they do life, but they never really feel alive. They never really feel like, yes, you know, I'm at peace with life. And so those are people that we would put it in the category of mild or moderate depression. Clinical depression is when you struggle to get out of bed and you just want to put the covers over your head. And some people who are clinically depressed don't get up and shower. They won't, do household responsibilities. The laundry doesn't get done. They don't feel like cooking. They don't feel like eating. And so again, there's levels of depression. So in terms of some of the symptoms, feeling sadness, and we call it baseless crying, where you can't figure out why you are crying and the tears just come. You may have angry outbursts and feel irritable, or this ongoing frustration, loss of the activities that you enjoy, being intimate, or some of the hobbies and sports that you once enjoyed. Depression can take those joys away from you, being tired and sapped of your energy, and difficulty sleeping. Some people will lay in the bed all day, but not necessarily be able to sleep, but then others can sleep and sleep for many, many hours. Depression also brings some unexplained physical problems. People get headaches, they get backaches, some unexplained gastro, I can't remember the gastro, and yeah, that word, it's escaping me at the moment. And then people get to the point where they can actually have suicidal thoughts, and wanting to harm themselves, or just not wanting to be here. And so if any of these symptoms persist for you, I would suggest that you absolutely seek help for the depression that you are experiencing. Another common challenge that people experience, especially during the pandemic, where people experience so much loss. Grief is real. And many people want to stuff the pain of grief and put it in a box someplace and just keep life moving, get back to work, do all of the things that, that they did in the past, so that they won't have to think about the loved one, or they won't have to think about the loss. And grief can hit you in a lot of ways. Just as some want to stuff it, others end up in their bed and struggle to get out, struggle to move forward in life. The one thing that I can say is that time does not heal all wounds. I'll say it again. Time does not heal all wounds. It's what you do during that time that will be the indicator of how much healing you will experience. And so you can look up a year from now after your loss. And if you haven't grieved well, if you haven't done the work of grief, if you haven't gotten help, if you haven't processed through your feelings, if you haven't taken time to journal your journey, there's lots of things that a counselor will say needs to happen during your grieving period, so that you can get to the other side and get to a place of acceptance of life as it is now, without what you had or without what you thought life would be. And so again, what you do during the time of your grief is going to determine how well you heal. Grief is natural. It's a natural response to loss. It's a natural emotional feeling of suffering that you get for someone that you loved that is no longer with you, a job that you thought that you would have until retirement that you ended up losing, the 2 years of life that you thought, enjoyable life that you thought you would have, but ended up losing it to the pandemic. Your children have are subject to being grieving that loss of the 2 years of schooling that they didn't get the way in which they were accustomed to. And so everyone who, all of us who went through this pandemic could be in the position of having experienced grief in some sort of way. And then there is trauma. Again, during this pandemic, so many people, especially those first responders, those who are in the health field, those who are in my field, this was the first time that, and those who are in the health field, in my field, we were experiencing secondhand trauma, because we saw so many people who were hurting, so many people who couldn't figure out how to get their life moving, how to figure out how to move past all of the pain that they had been experiencing. And so we had the pandemic, and then we had George Floyd, and we had all of the racial challenges that we experienced, well, haven't stopped experiencing, but the height of it during the pandemic in a couple of years ago. And so seeing that trauma for us as professional mental health professionals, I felt that was the first time that we were hurting just as much as the people that we were called to help heal in their hurt. And so it was a very trying time for us, and we really had to come together and support each other and spend more time with each other so that we could be good for the people that would be sitting in front of us, or the people that would be in our virtual sessions. And so when we talk about trauma, we're talking about that psychological damage that a person experiences in their mind, where they no longer have the capacity to hold on to their emotional coping skills, their emotional fortitude. They lose that ability. And so one person's trauma is not another person's trauma. Resilience is not across the board. Everybody doesn't have the same level of resilience. Everybody doesn't have the same level of psychological fortitude, or what we call mental toughness. And so where you may see someone kind of falling apart at the seams over a tragedy or over an incident that you feel you could have gotten through without experiencing it or showing the same signs that they did. Again, we can't put we can't use a measuring stick for another person's trauma. And so trauma is real. The after effects and the behaviors, people get become hypervigilant through based on trauma. People become re-traumatized when they consistently look at the same thing, look at the news. People become re-traumatized when they live in inner cities with gang violence and the fear of hearing gunshots and things of that nature. And so trauma is real. And so when you're in a crowd and you hear a loud noise and you jump, the people that are hypervigilant is because they have lived through some sort of trauma. Trauma can be a one-time event, or it can be an ongoing living experience, lived experience. And so those are, no, I have one more common mental health challenge that people experience, and that is unforgiveness. And a lot of people wouldn't think to put unforgiveness in the category of a mental health challenge, but unforgiveness can do a number on your emotions and your physical body. And I like this quote. It says, unforgiveness is like a cup of poison where, wait, I can't, let me see this. I'm trying to read it. Unforgiveness is like drinking a cup of poison, hoping that it hurts the other person. And so when we talk about unforgiveness, it really does impact your emotional well-being. It impacts your physical well-being. And so people, of course, people experience high blood pressure for other reasons, but a common denominator, these are common denominators with high blood pressure, anxiety, heart attack, back pain, headache, cancer, depression. Unforgiveness is a common denominator for all of these. And again, it doesn't mean that you are walking in unforgiveness because you have anxiety. But when you experience several emotional health challenges, it's important to do a self-evaluation. What is going on with me? What am I thinking? What I have been processing? Who am I holding in contempt? Who am I not forgiving? Just doing a wellness check, a check of from your mind, your body, your spirit. Where am I? And so it's just really important for us to make sure that our mental health becomes a priority, because if our mental health is not a priority, it is going to inevitably affect the other parts of us. If we are mentally and emotionally challenged, our physical body can become challenged, our spirit man can become challenged. Nobody feels like praying when they're emotionally challenged. Nobody feels like reading scriptures or whatever your faith may be. No one feels like really pursuing the greater things in life when they are emotionally challenged. So it's important to prioritize your mental health. And so let me give you, I'm going into the tips now. of how we can, each one of those common mental health challenges that we talked about, I am now going to kind of give you some tips, some brief tips. So when we talk about grief, and I mentioned earlier that healing does not happen just because time passes. Healing happens because you choose to grieve well. And so when we talk about grieving, we know that grief itself doesn't end. You will always think about your loved one. It can, the times that you had with them, or even the last days that you spent with your loved one, it can pop up. It can pop up 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, but the grief changes if you have grieved well. And the pain of it lifts if you have grieved well. And so I'm going to just show you the cycle of, or the stages of grief. And I said cycle because we don't want you to believe or think that this is linear, that there are stages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, bam, I'm done, and I'm good to go. It is cyclical. And so individuals who go through the stages of grief can start in one place and get through to stage 4 and then find themselves back at stage 2. And so I just wanted to, to reiterate that this is not a linear process. It is cyclical. And so in stage 1 of the grief process, people start out with feeling the feeling of denial, like I can't really believe that this is happening to me. What is going on? And again, this is not just the loss of a loved one, but it can be any kind of loss. People do grieve. The loss of a marriage, and the loss of a pet, the loss of a job, any type of loss. Stage 2, people do tend to get angry. And these stages, these behaviors that are directly related to grief are normal. These are the stages that people do go through. So anger, why me? This is not fair. How could this happen to me? Who is to blame for this? Some people blame God. Some people blame, another loved one, or they blame themselves. How could I let this happen? I should have been, I should have, done something different. And, what could I have done differently? Stage 3 is what we call bargaining, like, oh my God, if I could turn back the hand of time, if I was just in this place when it wouldn't have happened. And so that too is a very common part of the process. People do become depressed. They get sad. What's the point in living? Life is not going to ever be the way that it was. And so I don't even want to know what life is going to be, because I wanted it to be what it was. I wanted it to continue. I wanted them to be here. And so that again, those feelings are very normal. And then the goal is, after you have cycled through, and I can promise you that it's not easy to cycle through these stages by yourself, or you can cycle through, but to get through them well, you getting help would be advised. The goal is to get to stage 5. And that is the place of acceptance. It's going to be okay. And I'm going to be able to live my life and live it full with the memory, live it full. Going forward, I can take control of this. I can manage this. I don't have to fall apart. I can have good days. I can have bad days, and that's okay. I can have days that I cry, and after I cry and mourn the loss, I can get up and I can move forward with life and not feel guilty about it. And that's another area that people struggle with, the survivor's guilt, and just, why was it me? Why am I still here? And just feeling like they should not or don't have the right to continue life as or enjoy life because their loved one is no longer with them. And so those are the stages of grief. Again, getting help to work through grief is advised. And then when we talk about forgiveness, some of the tips that I would share is to jot down those things that you are holding on to. It's helpful. You can write a letter. You don't necessarily have to give the letter to the one that you're holding on to things, but you can write the letter just for the sake of getting it all out. You can burn the letter, you can rip the letter up. It can be just symbolic of letting it go. Holding on to unforgiveness can become a root. It can become a root of bitterness. And so you definitely want to set your own self free. And so forgiveness is actually giving up the hope that the past could be any different. We can't change what happened in the past. And it's being deliberate, making a deliberate decision to let go of resentment, to overcome those negative emotions, to make a decision that I'm not going to hold on to offense, because really the bottom line is we can be holding on to all of these feelings, and in holding on to these feelings, the other person is moving on with life. And so you're the one in prison, you're the one who can't seem to move forward in life, and you're the one who will end up with those sicknesses that I shared earlier on the other slide. So I just want to read this today. I decided to forgive you, not because you apologized or because you acknowledged the pain that you caused to me, but because my soul deserves peace. And I really like that. I love that quote. And so there are times when forgiveness does call for confrontation. But I will say that when you confront someone with pain, with expressing pain that they afflicted your soul with, you should be healed first. Because if you are looking or going into that discussion with the desire for them to validate, or with the desire for them to say, yes, I was wrong, that would be great. That would be absolutely ideal, but it doesn't always happen. And so when you are choosing to confront, you should confront after you have done the work yourself. So that it's just, I'm sharing this with you. This was my lived experience with you. I've already come to the place where I've forgiven you, but I just needed you to know. And so this way, if that person doesn't validate you, if that person doesn't own their part, then you don't leave further wounded. All right. So on to tips for easing depression, and then we'll go into anxiety. So when we talk about coming out of depression or easing depression, there are books, there are self-help books, and I have some resources on slides at the end of the presentation. But it's really important. We can do, people can come to counseling, and we can try to help you with, tips and homework assignments and coping skills and many different things, treatments. and modalities and various activities that counselors do. But if your body isn't prepared to work or to cooperate with the healing process, for example, if you are consuming lots of sugar and caffeine and alcohol, you're not putting your body, your physical body, in the position of being able to work through your depression. Sugar causes brain inflammation. Brain inflammation causes mood swings and mood changes, the inability to think clearly. And so if you're not going to handle your physical body well, you put yourself in the position of not being able to work through your depression fully. Physical activity is necessary, getting fresh air, getting your body moving. Some of these things that we share with our clients that we will tell them will help with depression, they look at us like, that's just a common thing. Yes, there are a lot of common things that people don't do. A lot of people don't have physical activity. They don't walk. They don't get their body moving. A lot of people don't keep a regular sleep routine. So these are things that can help to ease one's depression. Developing a wellness toolbox, things that you can put in like a physical box, things that speak to you, that boost your wellness, that boost your emotions, that bring joy to you. Maybe it's pictures, maybe it's a game you like to play. Maybe it's it can be anything that your a hobby that you enjoy doing. Make sure you have developed your own wellness toolbox so that you have something tangible to go to help ease your depressive episodes. Gratitude and affirmation go really far. You cannot choose to be grateful and be sad at the same time. They just don't, they cancel each other out. So if you choose to focus on your sadness, then it's difficult to have any kind of attitude of gratitude. But if you choose to focus on your gratitude, it's harder to be sad. So when you journal and you affirm yourself with the things that you're grateful for, there is not a day on that we live on this earth that we can't find something to be grateful for. All of this takes choice, that when we wake up in the morning, we make a decision that we are going to exercise gratitude. And all of these things that I'm saying, if you find that you're not able to put these things in practice on your own, again, that's when you should consider, maybe I need someone to walk alongside me. Maybe I need someone to hold me accountable. Maybe I need someone to help me understand how to put these things into practice. Supportive network of people who will lift you up, not people that will say, girl, I went through that too. I tell you, just put the covers over your head, you'll be okay. That's not the support that you are looking for. You want people who are positive, who are going to, lift you up and say, you're not staying in that bed all day. Come on, let's go out. Let's go for a jog. Let's go for coffee. Let's get out of the house. Let's get fresh air. So develop your support network. And again, this is not an exhaustive list, but for the sake of time, this is, and I'm running out of time, let me move quicker. Practical tips for easing anxiety. Changing your body temperature helps to ease anxiety. So running your hands under cold water, cold compresses, that helps, again, reducing the caffeine, aromatherapy, taking time to meditate. Journaling helps in every emotional challenge that you may be experiencing, trauma, depression, stress. Journaling and writing down your thoughts and processing through your emotions absolutely is a beneficial tip for working through any of these. This is called the ABCDE behavioral therapy model. And there's an app also that has this, and it's shared on the screen at the end. When something happens to us, it's called the activating event, something that's an event of adversity. We immediately have a belief about that event. And most often, if the belief about that event is negative, we're going to have a negative emotional consequence. When we have a negative emotional consequence, our behavior ends up being negative as well. And so this particular model brings you to a point where you have to challenge your negative irrational belief. So I'm at work and 5 people have gotten a promotion over me. And the 6th person, I applied for the job, the 6th person got the promotion and I didn't get it. So of course, that's a negative adverse experience for me. My beliefs about myself, I'm not good enough for that job. I will always get passed over for life. No one will ever recognize me or notice my talent or notice my skill, or maybe I don't have any talent or skill. And so then the emotional consequence from that, I'm going to be depressed. I'm going to have anxiety. I'm going to want to lay in the bed. When we get to the D, I need to challenge that irrational belief. It just may mean that that particular position maybe I wasn't a good fit for that, or maybe there was some sort of racism going on, who knows? But it doesn't necessarily have to mean that, that I am not good enough. And so challenging the irrational belief and coming to a place where you can replace that for a more healthy thought is this model. And I gave it to you very briefly, but again, this model is often used by counselors. It's part of what we call CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And so it's a very common model to use, but there is an app and the app can teach you how to actually follow through with these steps. All right, and so this is the last slide. This is also very helpful, waking up in the morning and making a decision to be positive. Putting stickies on your mirror, putting stickies by your bedside of, this is just a few positive affirmations that I indicated here, but you can Google positive affirmations and they come up by the thousands, and whatever speaks to you, you can jot down and have those who are Christians or, scriptures. There are many, you can Google positive scriptures, affirming scriptures, scriptures for depression, scriptures for anxiety, they're all there. And you can write those down and have them on Post-its. And life has to be one decision after the other. If you wake up and just allow life to happen to you, you will inevitably not be able to overcome any of your mental health challenges that you experience. It has to be intentional every single day. Again, before I end, I just want to say how you treat your body matters. Healing needs to happen mind, body, and spirit. And so there's a lot of study on gut, brain health. How you eat really does impact your emotional well-being. How you eat can impact your spiritual well-being. When you lack spirituality, it can affect your emotional well-being. So that too is very connected and should be handled in an integrated way rather than disjointed and disconnected. And so that brings me to the end of my presentation. And I think we're going to have questions. I hope I didn't go over my time to the extent that we.
No, Dr. Danita, you did just fine. Thank you so
Okay.
much. At this time, I will introduce to you my co-chair, Bianca Taylor Davis, who will handle the question and answer period.
Hi, good evening, everyone. And thank you again, Dr. Thompson. That was very thought-provoking as well as informative information that you provided with us. We have constructed a few questions that we would like to ask you, but we will also like to ask if anyone that is joining us here tonight, if you have any questions, we are welcoming you to place them into the chat so that we can ask Dr. Thomas and she can provide you with some answers and feedback to them. So I am going to start with the first question of how does one identify that a mental health episode is actually developing?
What I find is that people usually within their friend group, within their community, when you're in community with people, people usually will say, "Are you okay? You know, something seems to be going on." We're not always able to see it or readily recognize it ourselves. And it also depends on how severe the challenge is that you're experiencing. If you have an anxiety attack, that's pretty obvious. You know, you feel like you're going to faint, or you're experiencing the shakes, or anxiety attack is obvious, so something has happened. So it really depends on the severity of the situation, but I really think that especially sisterhood is really important, and we should be in relationship to the extent where we're okay with saying something's not okay with my sister.
Great. And I'm actually looking in the chat, and I'll go back and forth between. The one question that we do have posed in the chat is, do you accept Blue Cross and Blue Shield?
I do. We do. We accept all major insurances at Mending Hearts. I will say though, right now we have some availability, but we often have a long waiting list. But I have brought on a few new counselors, and so we do have some availability right now, but we literally get 10 inquiries a day, 10 new intakes, and it's just really hard to service everybody. People are just in desperate need for help, but don't let that be your, don't allow that to deter you.
All right. The next question we have is, what are some of the signs to look for mental illness?
So some of the same signs that I mentioned in some of those slides: feeling fatigue, ongoing fatigue, sadness, and it depends on the mental illness that you are referring to, but sadness, inability to concentrate, losing focus, being very short-tempered when that's not typically your behavior. And so when you see real behavior changes, you want to think, what's going on inside of me? This is not me. This is not the way that I usually move. This is not how I operate. So, let me do some self-checking here.
All right, and we'll jump to the chat. One of the next questions is, what is the app that you mentioned that could be used? I believe that was during the, yes, the resources.
Mm-hmm. So this one's the CBT Thought Diary is the app that models the slide that I showed you, the ABCDE slide.
All right. The next question that we have here, are there any distinguishing signs between youth and adults when it comes to mental illness?
It depends on how young, but teens, it's a little bit more of a challenge because teens typically do withdraw from their family. They withdraw to their rooms often. But sadness is sadness. Not wanting to be with your friends, or as an adult, you don't want to be with your adult friends. Those things are the same. Younger children, you may find them crying more often. You may find them, not enjoying playing with, the things that, or the activities that they have done in the past. It's just really a matter of observing. If you know your child, their regular behaviors. Whenever you see something different, it should raise a flag and say what's going on. Not to the extent where you start, being anxiety filled over, but just enough to say something is different. Let me probe a little bit more.
All right. The next question we have here is, in terms of the situation being passed over for a promotion, mental health wise, where do you draw the line and leave the company?
Oh, I don't know that I could give that. There's a lot of reasons why you would leave or stay. If you don't have the financial means to leave, you go and get counseling to help you stay until you can leave. And a counselor can help give you good coping skills where you can stay at a place where you've been passed over. And again, it depends on why you were passed over, whether you have the fight in you to go through the whole HR route and, and grieve it. And if you're going to do those things, then you have to know that you have the fortitude, the psychological fortitude. So going to a counselor and getting, built up, especially if it really devastated you, you want to get built up before you try to enter into a fight. But I don't know that I could really say when someone should leave a job. That would be something between you and your counselor. If your counselor recognizes that you just are not, you're not healing, because every day you go in there, it's a trigger for you and you're not able to utilize the coping skills, and the two of you come to an agreement that this just isn't a place where I can stay and be able to heal at the same time, then that counselor can help you with that transition.
All right, on to the next question we have here. What are the best ways to enhance or focus on one's mental health?
So I am really big now on the mind, body, spirit approach. I think that healing in isolation is not as effective as we had thought in the past. People go, to the counselor, but not taking care of their physical health, not eating well. If you are stuffing yourself with sugar, carbs, and caffeine and alcohol, you're just not going to heal emotionally. So taking that journey to be careful about all of you, your mind, your body, and your spirit. Taking the time to meditate is important. Taking the time to get outside and walk, hydrating yourself. If you don't hydrate yourself, that could increase a mood swing. It could increase your depression. And so all of it plays an integrated role in your healing process. So do something in each category each day.
All right. What are some of the common types of mental illnesses that are plagued in our community?
the ones that I mentioned are the common ones. I specifically chose those because that's what our community typically deals with. And I live in Burlington County, but the statistics said that African Americans are five times more, or the depression rate is 5% higher than our counterparts.
All right, and just to piggyback off of that question a little bit, I remember at the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned that people, mostly time, those who look like us, oh, they're just crazy.
Mhm.
Where does that come from? How did that originate to say, oh, they're just crazy? Or if you hear back in the day, oh, Junebug, he's a little special. And like, where did that come from?
Where did that come from? I can only surmise. I don't really know why we use those words, except that if we go all the way back to slavery days, we had to be perfect. We had to, there couldn't be any flaws in us, or we would be sold off the plantation. And I don't know. I'm trying to process what I'm thinking. We were called names on the plantation, and I just think that culturally, name calling is really big, in our culture. And I don't know if it started back from the fields. I don't really know, but name calling is a big thing. No, you know what? So name calling is a big thing. And I remember reading about this and actually sharing about it on one of my Facebook Lives. So the master wouldn't sell a slave who was, the master wouldn't sell, the parent would point out all of the negative things about that child so that the child wouldn't get sold. And so post-traumatic slave behaviors brought us to the place of being in that cycle of only seeing what is negative. And I think I'm explaining that the way in which I recall, reading, there was a book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. Yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Nope, it did. It just,
yeah, that's my guess. Yeah.
Because we get, oh, they're just crazy. Oh, so-and-so just, they're a little, a little off, but they're okay. And we never know where that comes from. Instead of saying, okay, there's something different about this person. Why are they different? How can we address their differences? And are they actually really different, or do they just see it differently from their perspective than ours? And we're just calling them crazy because we don't understand.
It could be that, or they could genuinely have some mental health challenges, because that is real. People have mental health challenges due to environments that they grew up in. Trauma could have happened even in there's studies that talk about trauma in the womb. And so you just never know why people experience what they experience. The real focus should be on helping people get the assistance that they need to be able to overcome what they're experiencing, rather than focusing on what their challenges are.
All right. So next question I'm going to go off to is, what is the likelihood of finding an African-American mental health professional in our area? Is there a professional group or consortiums that one could look up? Because I know you said that you fill up very quickly. So do you all, share resources or?
We do. I do fill up quickly. There are 16 of us, and 15 of us are African American in my practice, but there are Black therapist groups. I was looking at it, looking to see if I can find them on Facebook. Therapy for Black folks. You can look up Black therapists on Facebook, and there are several groups that will pop up, and you can search in that way, Black Therapists Rock, and you can type in and say, can anybody recommend a Black therapist in the area? I do have others that I am in relationship with that are in the Burlington County area. I don't know too many in Mercer County, but I do know in Somerset and Burlington County.
All right. How do we promote the use of counseling and services to our community members who have a history of feeling that getting professional help is not needed or necessary?
I think a good place to start is in the churches. When the churches release their people and say that God is okay with Jesus and therapy is good, I think people feel released. I think community groups should do educational moments like this. Again, churches can open their doors for bringing in mental health educators. And when the leaders of the community recognize it, then people usually follow and say, oh, okay, it must be okay. And now we're seeing influencers on social media, and they're talking about their mental health challenges. That helps, when people see famous people be okay with going to get help. And so I think it's becoming a lot more acceptable. I know based on the calls that we get, probably 70% of our clients are African American. And so that's really exciting to me that, people are reaching out for help.
All right. We have more questions that are coming from the chat that my SARA Sharon Stephens is going to pose to you. But before I kick it to her, I'm actually going to be placing in the chat our evaluation. So if you can please take a moment to complete the evaluation while we're in the middle of our question and answer period, we would greatly appreciate it. Sharon, you have the mic.
Sure. Hello, everybody. We have a few in the questions in the chat. The first one is PTSD classified as mental health issue or?
PTSD is a diagnosis. And diagnosis, people usually get a diagnosis when their mental health challenge keeps them from being able to do life regularly, daily. And so that's usually when people have a diagnosis. So yes, PTSD is a diagnosis.
Okay. And you had mentioned about your practice. Do you offer in-person or telehealth counseling?
Both.
Both? Okay. And possibly because of historical stigma of mental health, do you find more African Americans are now seeking treatment?
Yeah, as I stated earlier, because people in leadership positions are talking about it and talking about the importance of it. And now there are many African American influencers and, actors and actresses that are talking about it. We do find that. And it's a level of education. This generation is educated differently from previous generations. And so it's just more accepted with Gen Z and millennials.
Okay. Yeah, and I have a question myself, going back to what you were talking about in terms of anxiety and depression. What is your definition of prolonged depression when people need to seek help? Is it a couple weeks? Is it a month? Is it?
Yeah, well, when you have it, it depends. Like if you just lost a loved one, you're gonna experience feeling low for definitely more than a month. The depression that I mentioned earlier, and I called it dysthymia, that's prolonged. When I that the definition, by definition, that prolonged depression is 2 years or more. It's like my life is like this, my life is just beneath the bar. I've recognized, from my teen years that I just feel like I live beneath the bar. But if it's a situation that happens, like grief or loss, the grief for loss of a job or, loss of a loved one, you usually, if you are gone like 5-6 months, and I hate to put time limits on somebody's grief because everybody doesn't grieve the same way, but if you find like you just are not getting any better, the crying is not 4 days apart as opposed to daily, like it should start to become fewer, and the symptoms should be fewer and further between. And so if you don't find that space between your episodes and your wanting to stay in the bed, if you don't find that it's getting fewer and further between, you should seek help.
Thank you. That's if it was in the chat.
All right. We have one more question before we wrap up here. And that is, how do you determine if a mental health professional is moving you towards mental health? Is this a good match for you?
So how do you determine if the counselor is a good match? Is it just like, are they helping you meet your goals? Okay. So you and the counselor establish your goals. The counselor doesn't establish a goal. You come in saying what your issues are, what your problems are, and a good counselor should help you be able to visualize what it would look like to be healthy in that particular area. So once you get a picture of what you visualize as health, then the steps that you take with that counselor should be always working towards that goal. If you find that you just don't feel connected, it shouldn't take more than 3-4 sessions to know that there is a connection that you have, with that counselor. And not every counselor does connect, and it is okay. It's okay that you don't have this therapeutic connection, and it's okay to look for another counselor. But it's also, you also don't want to sit and pick out, they don't do this and they don't do that, and trust the process. Once you get into the process, trust the process. Everything that happens in the, 4th, 5th, 6th session, it may not always, sometimes it just takes a longer period of time to be able to realize your goals. And be okay with asking the counselor questions, things that you may not understand or things that didn't hit you well. Be okay with saying, that particular statement or this particular treatment or this particular activity, it doesn't really do it for me, or I'm struggling to understand how this is helping me. And the counselor will share with you how this particular activity can help you get to your stated goal.
Okay, so it's okay to, they're not a good match the first go around, but we shouldn't be counseling hopping,
Right.
so to speak.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, great. So Dr. Thompson,
Counseling hopping can be avoidance for really wanting to deal with your issue.
there we have it.
When you start finding something wrong in every professional that you, sit with, it can be a sign of avoidance.
Great.
Mhm.
All right. Well, Dr. Thompson, thank you, and thank you again. The information that you have provided for us, I can't even begin to explain how it's going to help mend some hearts and hopefully
Nice.
provide some resources for our attendees here that have joined us for this evening. Here are some of the resources Dr. Thompson is sharing on the screen here for us to partake in. This webinar actually is recorded and will be available on our social media platforms to view at a later time. So if you can't grab the resources now, you can go back later once it is available to be viewed again. At this time, we do have the evaluation in the chat. So if you have not been able to complete the evaluation form, we ask you to do so now. And we just have a few little things to mention before we close out, and I bring on our president for closing here.
Excuse me, can you ask Dr. Thompson to stop sharing?
Mhm.
Thank you.
All right. Regina, can you share the event flyers for us, please? All right, everyone. As we conclude our presentation, we just want to show you a flyer of our upcoming events from the Health and Wellness Committee. We are back in the park. We are outside, ladies. On Saturday, May 14th, we will be hosting our 5K Sisters Walk in Trenton, New Jersey at Cadwalader Park. This year's theme is addressing the whole woman, one step at a time. So if you can please come join us. If you and your girlfriends want to come out and get your stroll on, or you know of a group that wants to get together to put some steps forward, and not only for your mental health, but for your overall physical health as well, come on out and join us on Saturday, May 14th. We are asking for pre-registration for our walkers, as well as if there are any vendors or sponsors who would like to sponsor or be able to sell your goods at the events. The information is on the flyer below. We are also we have one more week for the next flyer. Do you have
Are
it?
you? Yes. Are you able to see it?
Yep, I have it.
Okay.
All right, and we are heading towards the end of our diaper and wipe drive. The Health and Wellness Committee has been collecting diapers and wipes to be presented to Homefront to help them reach their goal of 500,000 diapers by Mother's Day. So if you or anyone you know would like to contribute, we ask that you contact any member of the Trenton Alumni Chapter with your donations, or if you would like to make a monetary contribution, you can do so by sending a check payable to the Trenton Alumni Chapter, and the mailing address is indicated below on the flyer. If you do need these flyers and you're not able to see this information at the time, they are available on our social media web pages. And so that concludes the events that the Health and Wellness Committee is running and will be having on Saturday, May the 14th. At this time, I will ask for SARA President Georgette Bowman to come on and provide us with a closing for today's webinar. And thank you all for joining.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Dr. Thompson, you have provided a wealth of information for us. And it was a lot of information. I've taken so many notes. I've tried to grab as many screenshots as I can, but I want to say thank you. Thank you to all those who were able to participate. I want to take this time to thank our Health and Wellness Committee for this virtual speaker series on mental health, and also thank our technology team as well this evening. And I want to say it's just a wonderful topic that we can share with us and for us. And I'm hoping that this information will be shared as it is on Facebook, and everyone can walk away with a wealth of knowledge and be very comfortable that it is okay to get help.
Mhm.
So again, thank you everybody for coming out this evening.
Thank you for
I
having
turn
me.
it back over to our chair. Oh, you're very welcome. I'll turn it back over to our chair if she has any.
Just wanted to say thank you again, as it's been said. We hope to continue to bring these kinds of activities to you. So we ask that you please complete that evaluation. It will still be available to you. All you have to do is click it in the chat. This helps us to know what is needed in our community that's relevant. And tonight, Dr. Danita, you brought all the relevance to us. So again, thank you. And I
Thank
will
you.
be in touch as a counselor. So I wanted you to know that so we can share resources. Thank you so
Awesome.
much. And good night to everyone. Thank you.
Good night. Thank
Good
you.
night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
I just stopped